Okay, so once again, welcome to the 2020 webinar series, AMATIC. This is Inclusion Early On, Engaging All Students from Day One, sponsored by the AMATIC Equity Committee. We have AJ Stahelic, Shane Tang, Dorota Jacques. And at this point, the views expressed by the presenters are not necessarily the views of AMATIC. Any commercial products mentioned are not endorsed by AMATIC. Thank McGraw-Hill for sponsoring the 2020 AMATIC webinar series. And AJ, I will stop here and let you share your slides and introduce yourselves. And I will sit back and watch the webinar.
There we go. All right, sorry, I was getting everything set up. If you're just coming in and just entering, everyone can hear me? I'll go with Shane and Dorota, thumbs up. Okay, great. So please continue putting your name, your college, and your location in the chat box. We are members of the Equity Committee. Dorota founded it a while back. I'm taking over as of actually this month as the chair of the Equity Committee, and our webinar series is Inclusion Early On, Engaging All Students from Day One. And we want to welcome you to this webinar. So first up, just a quick announcement to let everyone know the monthly equity events. This is one of them. This is our January event. We also have in February coming up a follow-up on this. So we'll send an email blast to see what ideas you utilized in your first day or your syllabus, or at any point during the semester when you started implementing them. They can be used at any point. It's just best if they're used right off the bat because it creates that atmosphere. So we'll be following up with you in February. In March, there's going to be Introduction to Equity, Why is Equity Important, by another Equity Committee member. And April, yet another one, we'll be discussing an Equity Workbook Guided Activity. So in this webinar, we're going to be covering an introduction, which we just did, and creating an inclusive syllabus. That'll be Shane will be discussing that, what to do before you even get in the classroom. I'll be discussing a little bit about first day of class, unpacking the expectations for students, and Dorota will be discussing increasing students' engagement and how to increase retention. And like we said at the end, we'll do the question answer period. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Shane, and he will be discussing the syllabus.
Hello, everyone. I am Shane Tang from Solid Community College. And during last year and a half, I'm involved in the UpSTEM Faculty Fellows with the University of Utah. UpSTEM is an abbreviation for the Utah Pathway to Science, Technology, Engineering, and most importantly, mathematics. And I work with the colleagues from the University of Utah trying to change the culture that we have. Mostly the students are Caucasian in Utah area, just like the white snow in Utah. So quite a bit of minority students are not enrolled in community college, and likewise not in the, not enrolled in community college and not transfer or apply to University of Utah. We try to create a more inclusive environment, and so all come together is brand new, and there was no directives from administrators, mostly the faculty, and it turned out pretty good. I learned quite a bit from them, so a lot of the resources that I talk about the syllabus is from this UpSTEM Faculty Fellows Program. Next slide, please. So the syllabus is the first exposure. may even send it out before the beginning of the semester. And it's a reflection of the instructor. It shows who you are, even though just by writing. It's quite interesting. I teach online when students write certain things, and I can sense their emotion through their writings. So students will feel the same way when they read your syllabus. And this is a place where you can express your values. Now, for Solid Community College, we have departmental-wise syllabus. However, individual instructors still have the academic freedom to alter it. So, of course, essential features we shouldn't alter. We can modify a little bit so that students can feel more welcome when they come to the classroom. Next slide, please. So use inclusive language. And how do we do that? We prioritize learning over rules instead of talking about what penalty student will get if they miss an assignment and so on. How about we stress on encouraging them? The rules are not altered, but the way we express it may change to make them feel more welcome. And also the syllabus reveal the genuine enthusiasm, not only your enthusiasm as a teacher to teach the subject or love the subject of mathematics. Hopefully you will show students that you actually want them to learn. You provide as much as you can to help them learn. And inclusive classroom environment does not mean lowering any standard. Students should meet all the standards, but if you show your humanness, you tell your students, hey, I am a human too. I may make mistakes, and I encourage you to give me feedback, and that will be a plus in the classroom. I encountered an article from the New York Times. It's written by David Brooks, the opinion columnist. The title is called Students Learn from People They Love. If they enjoy learning from, if they see you as their friend and so on, they learn a little bit better. So we are not lowering standard, we just try to treat students as our friends and help them learn. And that will create a positive learning environment. Next slide, please. So in the syllabus, these are little changes. The pronouns, maybe you frequently use he, maybe once in a while use she or use they, so that it includes everyone. The phrase you guys seems to be very common to include everyone, but just itself, it seems like there is a bias to the male Americans. So if you like to use that, how about once in a while incorporate using you guys? And during the UpSTEM program, one instructor actually suggests that, hey, how about you just use you or you all, that includes everyone. Sometimes during winter time, we just passed December, we may say Merry Christmas, and not everyone is Christian, and some people may say, hey, happy winter break, and so on, Happy New Year. It does not mean that if you are Christian like me, you have to change your religion. You don't need to be ashamed of what you believe, but on the other hand, you include other people. And one thing interesting that I learned during the UpSTEM program was the little change like office hours. Some of the first generation students think that office hours mean the teacher will be in the office and you do not disturb him or her. And so the suggestion was to change it to students' hours, so that students feel like, hey, the teacher is there for me during this period of time. Next slide, please. I have drafted my own inclusion statement to include in the syllabus. So I will read it to you. I intend to serve and treat all students with dignity and respect, irrespective of your age, gender, religion, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. I will strive to provide an inclusive learning environment and expect you to be respectful of diversity as well. I welcome any suggestions for improvement. Well, I will just briefly describe this statement here. For me, being a mathematician, I do not like to be too lengthy. In mathematics, we always simplify and reduce. But on the other hand, I don't want to miss out any essential features. The phrase here with treat others with dignity and respect, I heard that when there was a death in the military base because someone didn't like the other person's race, the general stand in front of all the soldiers. He said, hey, if you cannot treat each other with dignity and respect, get out. And that has a strong impression on me that I have to include that phrase there. And I'm being a minority in the United States for over 20 years. And so I put down ethnicity. That's important to me. That through my experience teaching since 2001, almost 2 decades, I can see that people from different countries or different races, they can excel as much as we want to help them sometimes. And of course, they have to put forth their efforts. So there should be no bias based on people's ethnicity. And I put down socioeconomic status. I grew up poor. And how poor, you probably would have no idea. But I'm not going to describe it. But this is America. This is the American dream. If people work hard, they should be able to succeed. And we are being instructors. We are here to help them succeed. The last sentence here, I welcome any suggestions for improvement. That's important to me. Not long ago, I filled out a survey, and the person in charge would take out my comments as if it didn't happen. And that is a very unprofessional act. I am involved in many different areas, so I'm not pinpointing where it's from. But if I put down, I welcome any suggestions for improvement. I mean it. There in the book, How Humans Learn, there is a portion that mentions that a very good teacher win many teaching awards, and then another person go in to observe. During the observation, he find out that, hey, this teacher, whenever a student talks in the classroom, the teacher treats the student as if he or she is the most important thing in the classroom, paying attention, remember, and so forth. And that shows the respect and treating others with dignity. So that's my inclusion statement. As far as I know, not very mathematics teachers have any inclusion statements. I encourage all the audience, write your own inclusion statement and put in your syllabus. Next slide, please, AJ. So I also created a symbol here. This is the ideal situation. And assume there are 12 students. And this symbol is meaningful to me. And every time I see it, I put in the syllabus also. And I put in some of my documents. And every time I see it, it's a reminder to me that, hey, equity and inclusion are important to me. Next slide, please. So equity, it has to be personalized in some ways. And so in the classroom, I would call the student by name, and so that the student will feel that, hey, it's personalized. Some instructors will ask students what pronoun would they like to use if they have certain preference and so on, if it's not that obvious. And some instructors would ask students to record how they pronounce their name, especially for those from other countries, or the name is not easily pronounced for most Americans. So that's a good way. And all 12 students would have a center, just like the circle would have a center and focus. The focus is learning mathematics, helping each one in the classroom to learn mathematics. And in this picture here, each person will sit next to 2 persons. It forms a group in some sense, and you have your neighbors. Hey, not only you are learning the material, your neighbors may be learning the same thing, may be having the same struggle. And they are the resource to help each other also. Next slide, please. If there is discussion in the classroom, I try to allot, hey, equal amount of time for everyone. If someone yap like a puppy dog, about, hey, let other people express their opinion so that we can learn from each other. If there is presentation on the board and so on, how about each student get the same amount? Well, that's the ideal situation. Some may be too shy, but we try to promote equity here. Consultation hours, how about I encourage, hey, students to come in, and I think Dorota will talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So this also have the end goal in mind. At the end of the semester, how about I evaluate myself as a pie chart? Hey, how often I call a student? If they are 12, how about equal amount of time, or equal amount of times that I call their name? Encouragement, how about I encourage each student equally, not just the teacher's pets that sit in the front row or the second row. At the end of the semester, how about I evaluate myself? Do I smile at each student equally instead of frowning at certain students and so on? Being a minority, I see that happen sometimes, maybe unconsciously. And there is a web resource from the Harvard University talking about implicit bias. And we can all, take that survey and find out what implicit bias we have, even though we think that we are the most upright person and we can improve ourselves. And next slide, please. So how about you create your own inclusion statement and or symbols? And what other ideas are there? Well, make sure your material is accessible for all students. Your syllabus, you can create it on Microsoft Word, and then the title, you can put in different categories. And I'm sure your Disability Resource Center may provide some resources for you. And how about you tell the students, hey, I will create a survey, and then during first couple of weeks that they can you can gather information from them, and you will improve the course during the beginning of the semester, make them more comfortable. And so encourage each of you to write your own statement, and please feel free to send me an email, send me your draft. You're welcome to use some of the wordings I have in my inclusion statement, and I'll turn the time over to Dorota. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So my name's AJ. I'm at Ostos Community College in the South Bronx in New York, and I'm here to discuss first day of class. So now that Shane has welcomed everyone with the syllabi, and you've all created your own images, now it's time to work with the students one-on-one that first day of class. The key ideas I want to talk about are the preparation for the class, what it means to be prepared for class, and the time management that's required to be successful in the class, the growth mindset to interact and engage with the material in the class, and finally, understanding like viscerally what it feels like to learn, right? And when I finally understood this, it really changed my entire view of what learning is, and that really helped me develop as a learner. So we can just move forward. So this is a cute little first day activity. I kind of like it. It's really interesting when I first walk in. It's actually, this is called What's in the Box, not What's in the Picture, but trying to show you a box right now would not be very conducive to a webinar series, so I had to adapt. So now that I've talked about what's in the picture, I'm gonna take that away. And I welcome all of you to put in the chat box, what do you remember? So just write down how many of those you remember of what I just flashed on the screen. If you weren't paying close attention, that's cool. You could put 0. But if you remember a couple of the items or think you remember a couple of the items, just write them down. So we'll take just a moment to pause here while you write those down. Find a pen, paper, whatever you need. Oh, don't give it away yet. We're not working in groups yet. So in the chat box, just show how many you remember. So we're gonna go with, here's the picture. How many did you get? I see some threes. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things in the picture. Anyone get 5? Oh, we got some 5s. Nice job. Very exciting. Very cool. All right. Giving everyone a chance to weigh in here. So let's move forward. Why would I do this to you? Well, let's first talk about what made this exercise difficult for you. So people that didn't get the 5 or 4, you know, when you got the 3, what was it? You don't have to actually write in the chat box, but just think about, as a student, what made it difficult for you to recall what was in the picture. And we'll talk about it in a moment. But also, let's try again. So I'm going to take it away again. For those that only got 3 or 2 last time, maybe you looked at the picture this time when it was flashed up there. So you can get a couple more. And this is actually the first day activity I would do, right? So I'd empty out the box, put it on the front table. I would not tell them anything. I'd just start emptying the box. I'd put everything back in the box. And then I'd empty the box again. So it's kind of fun. They get 2 shots at it. And this time, before I take the stuff back out of the box or show the picture, I have them, you know, how many items did you get correct this time? I also welcome them to work in groups. Some of them already talk to each other. So that's kind of fun. And so that's the next step. You can have them work in groups, compare their notes, try to get as many items as possible. And then the benefit of this activity isn't so much in getting the right number of things, right? It's interacting with each other, getting them to do something right off the bat, and also getting them to pay attention from the start, right? Because when you first walk in, when that clock hits, for me, it was like 11 o'clock class, I believe, you know, they have to be there with something out to write on, right, to jot all this stuff down, or they have to have a really good memory and focus on the objects. So the benefits of it, when you do this with students that I found it was really effective, were that they understood that one of the difficulties is being prepared the moment you walked in. Some are like, oh, I couldn't write it down because I didn't have a pencil. I didn't have my paper out. I was going through my book bag. I was trying to get the supplies I needed, right? All of that impedes learning right from that first moment. So if I'm talking about a really important mathematical concept, they've already missed it, right? It's now on the board. They're trying to copy that down instead of moving forward. Another thing is paying close attention to everything that happens in class. Maybe they were talking to a student when they first walked in instead of focusing on what was coming out of the box. And also there's going to be a link at the bottom for this activity, how to actually pace it, because it's hard to demonstrate here. But pay close attention to what happens. When I'm doing something, it might have a purpose, so it's good to key into it. Another thing is, if you don't know what something is, ask a question. Did anyone know what that green $ thing is? Anyone want to type that in really fast? What is that green $ thing? Right? What the heck is that? So the students might not know what I just did, so they'd have to ask a friend what happened, or they'd have to be willing to ask me. It's one of those stress squeezes. Yeah, I got it from Citibank. Just happens to be that. It was on my desk at the time, right? So you just grab whatever's on your desk and go for it. And I tried to find an object they might not recognize, right? So that could be a bunch of different things, and then you don't get the item right because you don't know what it is. And the same thing happens in math. They have no clue what I just wrote, but no one's asking a question, so we're moving right past it. And last but not least, like working in groups. If I ask someone else what they remember, and then someone else what they remember, with our powers combined, we might get everything in the box. So that's just a fun first day activity. I have a couple first day activities that were saved or shared to us by our provost. I like this one a lot because it gets at all the key things that I worry about on the first day. And after that, the other thing that I really worry about is time management, right? So I know a lot of students have a crazy schedule. I know we have crazy schedules as faculty. And, you know, I try to respect that there are only so many hours in a day. And you can't create hours unless you lose all sleep. So on this grid, I hand this grid out. I use this grid too. I have my planner over here if anyone doesn't believe me. And in the grid, I block off classes I'm teaching, when I'm parenting, for them when they're working, if they have a job, if it's a full-time job. There are a lot of places that get X'd out because all of those things, classes, parenting, work, and getting to work, are all things that they can't be studying, right? Those are all the times they cannot study. Those are taken, they're gone off the chart. And then what's left on the chart? Do you have time for studying? You know, and hopefully they put sleep in there too, right? These are the awake hours that I have them scheduling. And sometimes, you know, is the schedule realistic? They have way too many classes, considering that they're a full-time worker, they're parenting, right? They might physically be unable to insert enough study time to be successful in their classes, and this gives them a realistic perspective of what they're capable of right off the bat. And, you know, the concern is overbooking yourself. If they're taking 5 classes and they have no study time, how successful can they be in 5 classes with no study time? So that's my second concern. My final concern is simplified by growth mindset. What kind of mindset do they have when they walk in that door, right? And a lot of people have heard of growth mindset, I believe. Carol Dweck is a great resource. There's a resource here you can click on when I share the slides. But this is the weightlifting analogy, is what I like. This is how I can visualize it. But things like, what happens if you're asked to lift a 1-pound weight? It's pretty light. So my brain is doing this, right? I'm going to go find something else to do, right? Lifting something boring is not going to be exciting for me. I'm going to go do something else because I know a 1-pound weight or an easy idea is not going to challenge me or get me anywhere, so I'm going to check my phone. What happens if I give you a 500-pound weight, right? I don't know about you. I can't lift 500 pounds, never could. That's what I would look like. And if I do that with the mental equivalent of lifting a 500-pound weight, a math idea or concept that's too far from where I am, my brain does that, right? So now I need a cold compress and a little vacation. I don't know if you've ever seen that expression on their faces, but sometimes I do, right? That means I'm giving them a problem challenge that's a little bit past where I should have. So my goal as a faculty member, and I tell them all this so that they can tell me what weight to hand them, right? If I give them something too heavy, they can tell me to go lighter. If it's too light, they can say go heavy. And notice how the weights are different for each student, right? The students in the class, for me, are not all at the same level. They vary, and trying to get the right weights for them is my challenge as an instructor. And it's a really hard challenge. It's not to be taken lightly, right? But if I did this, right, this is what their brain's doing. They're getting the muscle on, and they're building that mindset. And I can't wait for Dorota's presentation, which will be coming up after this, where she's going to talk about a little bit more about what this looks like as a faculty member as well, and go into more depth. As far as how it feels, this is the how it feels section to learn. And I actually got this from natural horsemanship, teaching horses how to, you know, get a saddle on them. I know it's a really weird place to get it, but this was years ago that I saw this, and it was from that, so I wanted to give credit to it. There are a lot more of this now, and I'll show you the variations that are available, but this is the one that I liked. So if you have a student that is in their comfort zone, this is stuff they know how to do, right? Get dressed in the morning, make breakfast, get to and from school. These are all the things that we learn how to do. So I know when I move to a new place, right, it doesn't feel very comfortable, but when it becomes my home and I go to it a lot, you know, it becomes comfortable, and then I stop paying attention. And you might experience that. I magically got from point A to point B and I don't remember doing it. That's when you're in your comfort zone. So the other area you could be is uncomfortable. That's where you're confused, right? The first time you try to get to and from somewhere, you might be confused. You might have to look at a map. You might need GPS, or now we use our phones for everything. So there's some confusion there, and you have to work within that to be able to get the outcome you want. And then there's completely uncomfortable. Don't know, don't care. So that's where you're just terrified of it, and you're not even going to bother with it. You're not going to leave the house to try to get there because it's too hard to get to. Forget it. Now in the classroom, we have all of these as well. The comfort zone are the math concepts we already know. The completely uncomfortable is when the student doesn't come back to class the next day. That means they're gone. So if that happens, that's when they got completely uncomfortable, freaked out, don't know, don't care, and now they're no longer in your classroom, so now you have to chase them down because they went too far from their comfort zone to the point of disappearing. For me, my goal is to keep all students right here. If they're confused in my classroom, I am happy, right? That's exactly where I want them to be. I want them to be every day in my classroom confused until we get to the test, and then I want them to be back in the comfort zone so that they can, you know, perform at a high level. So I reassure my students, if you're confused, that's great. And here are all the different things since I found it with the natural horsemanship program. There's all kinds of different graphics. If you like this, you can just Google comfort zone learning and you'll get all of this. So I am done with my part. I'm going to hand it over to Dorota. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to the webinar. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I will start even before you start the classes and then go to the couple of activities you can do during the first class, and then some things that are done in our college by everyone to go further past the first class. I'm going to concentrate on students, increasing students' sense of belonging, because that's really how you can engage them. And those two ideas go together. So if you increase students' engagement, you increase their sense of belonging. If you increase your engagement with them, increase their sense of belonging, and further, their sense of belonging will mean that they will be engaged in your classroom and succeed much better in your classroom. So before class starts, I know most of us do it for the online classes, but I think also it is very important to welcome students in your class before a class starts, even for the in-class classes, the in-building classes. Quite often, especially students for whom this is the first semester in college, they're confused, they are not sure what to do, they don't know where to get books, etc., etc. Also, it is a very good opportunity for students to share something with you that they might just not feel comfortable sharing in front of others. So we are required to have office hours during our first week before classes start. So you can invite them for that. You can also invite them to talk to you via email. And also, this is also a great opportunity to emphasize that they're invited to your office hours always. Next slide, please. So once you start your class, the first day of class, you should strive to create a welcoming environment in the classroom. So number one, always be there a few minutes before. Doesn't matter, first class, second class, always be there a few minutes before. It shows students that they're not just afterthought, but that you really care to be there, and welcome them as they come in. Say hello. I know most of us don't look like this nice lady welcoming everyone, but we can all be like that on the inside. Also, put your name on the board, especially during the first class. Students are confused, running around. They have no idea where to be. Again, this is indicating to them that they are welcome. Have posters of scientists or mathematicians from different ethnic groups and genders, if it's possible. Also, it is very important for students to feel like they're part of not only your classroom, but also college. So have posters or advertisements for different ethnic and other clubs in the classroom. Let them know that they can be part of the college. Also, if you post announcements about what's happening at the college, they also will feel like they're invited to come to them. Next, please. So we all do that, right? We all have students introduce themselves, but it usually takes around 5 minutes. We just go for students, they say some, something about themselves. They're usually quite unhappy about it. So I would suggest that you make it meaningful. Try to make it meaningful for you and for students. Ask them a question that could be of import to you. Also, we so rush at the beginning at the start of the semester. We rush and we want to cover everything so thoroughly, right? We are laser focused at this has to be done. We have to finish what needs to be done, but that's missing a point, because if you develop a student engagement, if you develop in students a sense of belonging, they will benefit so much more from learning from you. They just like Shane said before, if they feel the connection between you and them, and between them and other students, and between them and college, they will really learn so much better. So that's why it's very important to spend a long time, maybe even the whole class, on developing that student sense of belonging. So this is a different approach to mindsets, right? So why do we talk so much about mindsets, right? What does this have to do about math? But look at this, how often students come to you saying, there's no way I can learn math. I'm not good at math. I'm bad at math, right? They don't say that about psychology. They don't come to a psychology professor and say, I'm really bad at psychology. I'm certain I'll fail your class, right? So that's very important. Mindsets are very important for math, also for writing, but for math, it's just very, very important. So that's why to develop that open growth mindset in students, it's very important for you to talk about yourself. Why college was difficult for you, how you were able to succeed. Quite often they think, oh, this professor, they must have been born like that with their big degrees and wonderful brain, math brain. But once they hear that you had difficulty, they might be more perceptive to learning themselves, right? So there is a short video I'm going to. I posted a link at the end of the entire presentation, and about the mindsets. Somebody wants to write something. So if you could hold on with questions until the end, we would really appreciate it. We'll have some time for questions at the end. So once you talk about yourself and talk about the mindset, growth mindset, you can ask students to talk about their own fears and how they and obstacles that they face in their lives, but let them talk to each other so that they can be more open. Also, this talking to one another in small groups will help them develop friendships or just connections, and they can help each other in their classes. Next. Another thing that I think it's really worth doing is quite often we give students syllabus and they read it or they don't read it, right? It's just sometimes they read it, but most of the time they don't even read it, and even if they do, they kind of browse through it and forget about it. So there is like a scavenger hunt where you can ask students to find specific information on the syllabus. So number one, they will be able to find the syllabus on D2L or whatever other platform you're using. So number one, they'll know where the syllabus is. So even if they forget everything that they'll be working on in the class, they will know where to find it. Number two, they will learn some of that information and will be able to proceed with the course much better. Also, at every college, there are a lot of student support services, and we give students, again, we give them handouts, and those handouts, quite half of them end up in a big pile in the corner of the room, and the other half end up in the in the pile in their room. So but all this information now is also online on your website, on your school website. So it's if you use scavenger hunt and you ask students to find, let's say, the services for veterans or some other things, this way, or clubs, this way they will be able to, even if they forget everything, they will be able to look to find them online when they need it. Also, a good idea is to invite classroom representatives if they can come during the first class. Also, some people from student support services, such as Learning Center, or we have TRIO at Oakton. All of this strengthens and builds connections between students, between each other, and between students and the college. And it's very, very vital for students' success. Okay, so now we're going to go beyond the first day of college. And when I say that I'm suggesting things that are not optional, people, especially people who are involved with equity, they are not very happy when they hear not optional. But all of those things, you shouldn't assign, to make it equitable, you shouldn't assign any points to it. At the same time, make it not optional. Just say this is a part of your class. So require students to visit Learning Center during the second weeks of class. Don't make it optional. Why is that? Why is it important to make it not optional? So several studies concluded that especially minority male students feel like they show that if they go to a learning center, they will show that they are less. If you make it not optional, they just have to go. That's it. So that's very important to make it optional. Also, set up so this is what the whole school is, our Oakton Community College is doing. So we set up one-on-one meetings with students to talk during the first 3 weeks of class. And you talk with students about whatever they want to talk about. To prepare for the meeting, you ask students to fill a questionnaire about themselves, but more importantly, how you can help them in the course, succeeding in the course, and what kind of obstacles they might face, and what kind of difficulties they might encounter during the class. It's very important to reach out to them because some of our students are responsible for so much, especially students who are from other countries. When I encountered this first time, I was very surprised. So one student said, "Oh, my aunt is in the hospital. I had to be there for 2 days straight." But it turned out that nobody else spoke English in their whole family, so she had to be there. So you knowing situations like this ahead of time might allow you to be more lenient to a student and allow them to be more flexible on the tests and other assignments. So I think I'm almost out of time, and I would like to next, please. Okay, so there are several links that, so the whole PowerPoint is going to be posted, and there are several links there. The Mindset Kit website, it's absolutely fabulous website that you can design your own classroom activities for your students. It has really broad. Are you gonna link it or not?
Can you guys see it? Because I did open it up.
Yeah, we
just
can't
doing
see
PowerPoint.
it. It's okay.
You'll have to type it
So
out.
it's there. All of the resources there are really fantastic. I love the Growing Your Mind video because it's only 3 minutes long. So you can play it, and since it's only 3 minutes, it's not gonna take that much time away from your course. What the past 20 years of research of men of color tell us is fantastic webinar, very comprehensive, and I encourage everyone to watch it. And I wanted to thank you all very much, and now we're going to go to question and answer. Thank you.
So should I stop sharing?
AJ, I think you may have to hit share and then select the website that you were trying to open up to get that to show.
I put the link
Okay,
here.
we'll just go to
Yeah,
question.
the link is in the chat.
Yep, for one of the examples.
Yeah, we'll just go to questions if there are any questions.
Now's the time for questions. If anyone has questions for any of the panelists, go ahead and type it into the chat. We've got about 12 minutes. We'll try to get to as many of the questions as we can. But if there are more questions than time, then maybe the panelists will be willing to stay a few minutes longer, or we can collect those questions and maybe they can provide email responses to send out after the webinar. So if you do have a question, feel free to type it into the chat area, and then we'll take them as they feel like taking them.
AJ, would you mind go back to the inclusion statement slide? Thank you. Right there. I think Jennifer Reed mentioned that, hey, why not put sexual orientation in there? And that's a great idea. When I work with the UpSTEM colleagues, some of them actually have a very long list. And for sexual orientation, because we teach math and we don't discuss it, and we will not notice each other's sexual orientation, and it never was any concern to me, but I will consider putting in mind. But I encourage you to consider what's important to you, and put in your own inclusion statement, at least, if that's your priority. Thank you.
Shane, I think there's another question on there for you in the chat box.
Okay. I'll read it out here. When Shane recommended recording how a student pronounces their name, would that be by writing it down phonetically or an audio recording? I never had that problem in my class, but my colleague from UpSTEM mentioned it, and they will just have a sound file sent to the teacher, or they have some online platform so that you can hear the pronunciation and mimic it. Of course, if a person's from another country, the pronunciation may be different. They may need to have a few corrections before you can pronounce it right. But at least we as instructors, we care and we try to help them. And that's a great comment there. Thank you, Betty.
AJ, can you look posted? AMS has nice collection of posters. Can you copy this and include on our in our PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
You can include it like underneath where I have the pictures of Marie Curie.
All right, I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Shane, you're popular. You got another question?
Okay. The question is from Catherine. Could you explain a bit more about how you use your symbol? I actually have 12 versions of it, so I can rotate it, and then if you put the clock in there, I can make another 12 and so on. So different color can be on top, and at the beginning of the class, I may show them and tell them, hey, you know, what color you like, pick it. And some of them will pick the lower ones, and I said, hey, it's at the bottom, how come you pick it? What if it stays always at the bottom? And then I tell them about the American dream. Hey, and then I actually had another presentation. I have the symbol rotated and tell them, hey, you can become the top, and everyone will have chance, but you have to work hard in this class and so on. And I may put in different documents to remind myself, and sometimes I tell others. For example, I mentioned earlier that at some meeting, someone just keep yapping without letting other people have a chance. I may show them the symbol. Hey, each of the 12 people gets 5 minutes if we have an hour meeting. Then it becomes more equitable in that sense. And so it's in the syllabus and it's in other documents. Sometimes I say, and I will post one of those 12. So different color can be on top and just show people that, hey, I care about each one. Thank you. Anyone want to answer that? The next question from Sandy, how do you all modify exercises or problems to make them more inclusive?
I mean, I could take a crack at one thing that I do in statistics as one example. So I try to be really aware of where my students are physically, and we're in the Bronx, and we're very close to Harlem, and those two areas are starting to gentrify, and you can actually do the statistics to see that trend happening. So what's interesting is if you look at how much apartments are renting for and how much houses are selling for, the disparity between the mean and the median becomes much larger at the start of gentrification, because someone comes in and drops a whole lot of money on a house and buys like the entire brownstone versus, you know, renting all of the different apartments. So you can see the trend shift by looking at two measures of center. And that's one thing that I try to make them aware of is how data can be used to catch a trend before it becomes necessarily a reality. You could actually catch it pretty early on then. And another thing that I use in statistics is I try to get away from gender for the binomial distribution, because a lot of times an either or isn't as common. There's now a full exception of they as being a singular pronoun. So respecting that and not utilizing gender as a binomial distribution is one way that I look at it. I just pick multiple choice test questions, right or wrong, ABC. And other examples like that, you make the basketball shot or you don't, where there's less ambiguity about whether or not it's actually a binary. You guys want to take a crack?
I can tell what my colleague is doing.
Right.
So Mario Bora, he also in statistics. I don't teach statistics, and statistics would be like a really nice. So he uses many examples from like real life, from students' life. So actually from like a welcoming student, the first day of college and stuff like that. So he uses a lot of data from that. he also at Octon you can do a co-class with another professor. So he teaches statistics with a professor who does sociology, and they use a lot of data on disparity. Stuff like that.
I think also maybe in other courses, just diversifying the learning experiences would help with inclusion. If you think about how different people learn, some people are very visual, some people are kinesthetic. So if you're a visual learner, you want to see pictures of what's going on instead of, algebraic terms, maybe a graph is better for you. Or if you're thinking about, like I did histograms, I made everyone stand up and rearrange themselves physically into histograms, right, by size and height. So they created different intervals and different bins by moving around. So if you line them up by height, you can do this really fast. Thinking about multiple intelligences is also a good focus, I think.
Okay, it looks like we're just about out of time. If you could maybe in your own way thank the presenters in the chat area. And while we're doing that, wrap up with a few comments here. So thank you for coming today. If you're not a member, consider joining AMATIC so you have access to all the different resources. We are on Facebook. Search for AMATIC on Facebook. Probably need to update this slide now because Milwaukee conference has already happened, but 2020 it'll be out in Spokane. There will be other webinar opportunities, traveling workshops. Members of AMATIC, you get notification of those as they happen. We will post the recording and the PowerPoint with all the links on the AMATIC website, probably a week or so, depending on how fast we can get everything sent in and put up there. And if you would take a few minutes to evaluate the webinar, those who need who would like a certificate of attendance, the survey includes the contact information for that. So I'll leave the link or the QR code, and the certificate should be mailed out within about a week or so. Okay, so I'd like to thank AJ and Shane and Dorota for their presentation today. And if there are any other questions that are still coming, if they're willing to stay later to answer them, that's up to them. They're certainly welcome to. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording at this point.